Imagine living with unshakable peace where nothing and no one has the power to shake you. Where criticism, insults, and problems no longer steal your calm. It seems impossible, doesn't it? But the Stoics managed it. While the world reacted with anger and frustration, they maintained their serenity. Not because they didn't feel emotions, but because they learned to control them. Today I'm going to show you how you can do the same. If you apply these teachings, you'll never get angry or bothered by anyone again. Not because the world has changed, but because you will have changed. Before you begin, go to the comments and write, "Today my best version begins. I'm a Stoic." By doing this, you commit to taking control of your mind and living with discipline. Shall we begin? Number 1. The destructive nature of anger. Anger is one of the most destructive emotions that a human being can experience. Not only does it harm those around us, but it also eats away at us from within, weakening our minds and leading us to make decisions that we will sooner or later regret. The Stoics considered it one of the greatest threats to virtue, because when anger takes over, we cease to be rational and become slaves to our impulses. It is not a sign of strength, but of weakness, proof that we have lost control over ourselves. Anger is like an uncontrollable fire. It starts with a spark, perhaps a misinterpreted word, an action we consider unfair, or an unexpected obstacle. If we feed it with ruminating thoughts, it quickly grows into a flame that devastates our mental clarity, our relationships, and our well-being. Marcus Aurelius warned that the best way to combat anger is to prevent it from starting. If we learn to recognize its early signs, we can extinguish it before it consumes us completely. The consequences of anger are devastating. In addition to causing unnecessary conflict, it affects our health. Science confirms what the Stoics already knew. Anger raises blood pressure, weakens the immune system, and can trigger cardiovascular problems. It is not just a momentary emotion, but a poison that, if allowed to grow, destroys both body and mind. Epictetus taught that it is not external circumstances that upset us, but rather our interpretation of them. If someone insults us, it is not the insult that hurts us, but the importance we give it. Learning to control our perception is the first step to controlling anger. When we allow ourselves to be carried away by anger, our actions become irrational. In the heat of the moment, yelling, insulting, or even breaking something may seem justifiable, but when the storm passes, we realize that we only made the situation worse. An outburst of anger can destroy relationships that took years to build. An impulsive comment can leave wounds that may never completely heal. Seneca said that anger is like a momentary delirium, a state in which we lose control over our words and actions. If we observe ourselves closely, we will see that most of our angry reactions are disproportionate and illogical. Imagine an argument with a loved one. In the heat of the moment, harsh words seem necessary, but after everything calms down, we realize that we could have handled the situation more wisely. Most problems can be solved with dialogue and patience, but anger blinds us and prevents us from reasoning. Instead of seeking solutions, we seek revenge, and in doing so, we only feed a cycle of resentment and pain. The Stoics teach us that the best way to combat anger is through self-discipline and reflection. Marcus Aurelius recommended remembering that life is short, and that most of the problems that anger us are insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Seneca suggested practicing patience and indifference in the face of provocations. True strength lies not in reacting violently, but in remaining calm when everything around us seems to want to take control of us. Anger is an internal enemy, a beast that, if left untamed, can consume us. But the good news is that we can train our minds to not be carried away by it. The next time you feel anger rising, stop and ask yourself if it is really worth it. Remember that nothing external has power over you, unless you allow it. Peace is not in the absence of provocations, but in the ability to face them with equanimity and control. Number 2, all negative emotions arise from unfulfilled expectations. Negative emotions are not born from what happens, but from what we expected to happen and did not. Frustration, anger, sadness, resentment. All these feelings have a common root: the difference between reality and our expectations. When we believe that the world should behave in a certain way and it does not happen, we feel that we have been betrayed, but in reality, the fault lies with us. In the distorted image that we create in our mind, we cling to an illusion, and when reality destroys it, instead of adapting, we react with suffering. We get angry because people don't act the way we want them to, because the results aren't what we expected, because life doesn't follow the script we've written in our minds. We believe we deserve certain treatments, certain successes, certain paths without obstacles, but the world doesn't follow our rules. Frustration doesn't come from the event itself, but from the clash between what we wanted and what actually happened. Seneca said that we suffer more in our imagination than in reality. What hurts us most is not what happens, but our interpretation of the facts. If we learned to accept events without resistance, we would avoid much unnecessary suffering. Imagine someone who believes that their partner will never cheat on them, because that's how it should be. This person has built an expectation based on their own vision of what is right. But if the betrayal happens, the pain doesn't come from the act itself, but from the contrast with the idealized image they had created. Instead of accepting reality as it is, they fight against it in their mind, and this internal conflict turns into suffering. Another example is the person who expects their friends to always be available, that traffic will be smooth, that their boss will appreciate their efforts. When none of these things happen, they feel disappointed and angry because they assume that the world should follow their rules. The Stoics teach us that the key to inner peace is to eliminate unrealistic expectations. This does not mean resignation, but rather understanding that the world owes us nothing. We cannot control the behavior of others or external events, only our reaction to them. Epictetus said that we should accept whatever happens as if we had chosen it, because resisting reality only creates suffering. If we stop expecting people to treat us in a certain way, if we accept that they can fail us and that life does not follow a predictable path, we eliminate much of our stress and frustration. Accepting reality as it is does not mean that we should not have goals or desires, but rather that we need to be prepared for any outcome. We can strive to achieve something, but without clinging to the idea that it must happen exactly as we want. Otherwise, failure will destroy us. Disappointment does not come from life, but from our resistance to accepting its unexpected events. A Stoic understands that everything changes, that nothing is guaranteed, and therefore does not allow their emotions to be dictated by what is beyond their control. If we eliminate rigid expectations, we stop demanding that the world conform to our beliefs. Instead of getting frustrated when something goes wrong, we ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? Instead of feeling betrayed, we understand that people act according to their own nature and not according to what we imagine for them. The basis is flexibility, the ability to accept what comes without resistance. Happiness is not in making everything fit our expectations, but in learning to flow with reality without it robbing us of our tranquility. Number 3, anger is a reflection of the ego. Anger is nothing more than a reflection of the wounded ego. When we feel that someone disrespects us, treats us unfairly, or does not recognize our value, we react with anger because we feel our identity is threatened. We believe that we deserve to be treated differently, that others should see us as we see ourselves. And when this does not happen, we feel that there is something sacred within us, it has been violated. But the truth is that anger does not arise from what others do, but from our interpretation of their actions. It is our ego that demands recognition, that takes offense, that needs to defend its image. If this ego were not so inflated, if we did not take things personally, anger would lose its power over us. When someone speaks rudely to us, our first reaction is to think that they are attacking us. But what if this person is simply having a bad day? What if their words have nothing to do with us, but rather with their own internal chaos? The reality is that most of the time the actions of others are not a reflection of us, but of themselves. However, the ego makes us believe that everything revolves around us. We say, "He disrespected me, embarrassed me, did not value me." But what would happen if we stopped seeing ourselves as the center of every situation? If we understood that the behavior of others is a reflection of them, not of us? We could free ourselves from anger. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that it is not what happens that disturbs us, but our opinion about what happens. If someone insults us, the insult itself has no power unless we give it meaning. We can decide to ignore it, see it as a reflection of the other person, and move on without allowing it to affect our peace. But the ego wants to fight, wants to defend itself, wants to prove that it is right. And in this desire to protect our image, we fall into the trap of anger. We lose control and act impulsively. But if someone's insult does not change who we are, if their attitude does not define us, why allow it to drag us into a state of lack of control? A clear example occurs in traffic. When someone blocks our path, our ego tells us that it is disrespectful, that we need to react, that we cannot allow them to treat us like that. But that other driver did not even think about us. If he is simply trapped in his own world, our ego still transforms the situation into something personal, and with that anger dominates our mind. If instead of reacting, we simply accepted what happens as a neutral fact, we would avoid this suffering. The same goes for any other context at work, in relationships, in everyday life. Our reaction is not caused by the events themselves, but by the story we tell ourselves about them. The Stoics teach us that the key to controlling anger is to recognize the role that the ego plays in it. If we strengthen our self-esteem, if we stop seeking external validation, if we understand that our value does not depend on how others treat us, we become immune to provocations. Seneca said that the best revenge is not to be like the one who wronged us. If someone treats us badly and we respond with anger, we are letting them control us. But if we remain calm, if we choose not to play into that person's game, we demonstrate true strength. Anger is a reflection of an ego that has not yet learned to let go of other people's opinions. But when we understand that others do not have the power to define us, that their words and actions say more about them than about us, we free ourselves. This does not mean accepting abuse or remaining silent in the face of injustice, but it does mean learning to react with intelligence rather than emotion. Inner peace does not come from controlling others, but from controlling our reaction to them. When the ego ceases to be the center of our existence, anger loses its hold on us. Number 4, forgiveness frees us from anger. Anger is a heavy burden that we often carry. Without realizing it, we hold on to resentment because we believe that by doing so, we are punishing those who have wronged us. But in reality, the only one who is punished is us. Anger consumes our peace, imprisons us mentally, and prevents us from moving forward. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is the key that unlocks this cell. It does not mean justifying what was done to us, nor naively forgetting, but rather freeing ourselves from the need to continue suffering for something that has already happened. Forgiveness is not a gift for another person. It is an act of self-love, an essential step towards regaining our peace. When we hold on to anger, we relive the pain over and over again. Our mind becomes a battlefield where the past is still present, where we continue to feed what hurt us. But why carry this weight? Marcus Aurelius said that the best punishment for someone who has wronged us is to not be like that person. If someone has betrayed us, offended us, or hurt us, holding on to resentment only prolongs the control that person has over us. Forgiveness, on the other hand, gives us back our power, allows us to let go of the burden and move on without the past defining us. Resentment is a trap of the ego. It makes us believe that if we forgive, we will be showing weakness. But the truth is the opposite. True strength lies in those who control their emotions, in those who choose to let go of what hurts them, instead of holding on to it. Seneca taught that we should not allow anger to dictate our actions, because when we act in anger, we cease to be masters of ourselves. If someone hurts us, we respond with resentment. We are giving this person power over our peace. But if we choose to forgive, we regain control of our mind and our well-being. Imagine someone who has been betrayed by a close friend. The natural reaction is anger, disappointment, and a desire for revenge. But how long can this feeling be sustained before it becomes a burden? Resentment does not affect the betrayer. It affects the person carrying it. Every time this person thinks about the betrayal, They relive the pain, but if they decide to forgive, if they accept that what happened cannot be changed, and that the past should not define the present, they find freedom. Forgiving does not mean trusting the person who betrayed us again. It means stopping allowing this betrayal to continue to affect us. Forgiveness is a conscious choice. It does not happen overnight, and it is not always easy, but it is the path to inner peace. Epictetus reminded us that we have no control over what others do, only over our own reactions. If someone insults us, it is not the insult itself that hurts us, but the importance we give it. When we forgive, we stop giving it that importance. We understand that each person acts according to their own level of consciousness, and that their behavior reflects their inner world, not ours. This does not mean allowing abuse or accepting injustice, but learning to let go of the resentment that prevents us from living in peace. When we forgive, we do not free the other person, we free ourselves. We stop carrying an unnecessary burden. We stop wasting energy on a conflict that only exists within our mind. True revenge is not in causing pain, but in showing that the pain has not changed us, that we have moved on without letting anger consume us. Peace is not in waiting for others to repent, but in deciding that our happiness does not depend on their behavior. Forgiving is releasing the poison of anger and embracing the freedom that comes with serenity. Number 5. Practice not reacting when something irritates us, when we feel provoked or attacked. Our first reaction is impulsive, emotionally charged. We want to respond immediately. We want to defend ourselves. We want to prove that we are right. But at that moment, our mind is not operating on reason, but on instinct. And that is when we make mistakes. We say things that we later regret and make situations worse instead of resolving them. The practice of non-reaction allows us to avoid this. It gives us control over our responses and protects us from the emotional wear and tear that impulsive reactions generate when we take a moment before responding. When we resist the urge to act, we immediately gain power over ourselves. It's not about being different or repressing our emotions, but rather about training our minds so that we are not slaves to them. Marcus Aurelius said that the best way to defend ourselves from an offense is to not be like the person who offended us. If someone insults you or criticizes you harshly, reacting angrily is like falling into that person's game and allowing them to have power over you. But if you stay calm and choose not to respond in the moment, you show that you are in control, that your peace does not depend on the attitude of others. In everyday life, opportunities to practice non-reaction are constant. A coworker makes an unpleasant comment. An aggressive driver cuts you off in traffic. A family member insists on arguing in each of these moments. The decision is in your hands. Reacting immediately is either fueling the conflict or taking a step back. Observe the situation with detachment and respond intelligently. Epictetus taught that it is not what happens that affects us, but how we interpret what happens. If someone criticizes you in a meeting and you take it as a personal attack, you will feel angry and react defensively. But if instead, you take a moment to breathe and analyze whether it is really worth responding, you will be able to act calmly and professionally, without allowing your emotions to control your behavior. Not reacting is a demonstration of strength. Most people act on impulse, enslaved by their emotions. When someone irritates them, they react without thinking. They let anger take control. But the real power lies in those who resist this first reaction, in those who understand that they do not need to prove anything to anyone, in those who choose when and how to act. Seneca reminded us that time is a great filter for emotions. What today seems like an unforgivable offense, in a few days it will lose importance. What now deeply irritates us, in a few hours it will seem insignificant. Therefore, not reacting immediately allows us to gain perspective, to see the situation clearly before deciding how to act. Practicing non-reaction does not mean accepting everything in silence nor letting others walk all over us. It means acting on reason, not on emotion. If something truly deserves a response, the best response will be one given with a calm mind, rather than responding to fire with more fire. We respond with intelligence and equanimity, not because we are weak, but because we understand that our peace is worth more than a meaningless argument. Every time you feel the urge to react, remember that you can choose not to do so. You can let the emotion pass. You can observe it without letting it get the better of you. And when you do, you will notice something incredible. Conflicts will decrease, anxiety will reduce, and people who previously provoked you will lose power over you. Non-reaction is the gateway to true freedom, the ability to decide how and when to respond without being a slave to external stimuli. Number 6. The relationship between low self-esteem and anger. Anger is often nothing more than a reflection of insecurity. When we are not at peace with ourselves, any comment, any look, any situation that challenges our self-image irritates us. It is not the situation itself that makes us angry, but rather what it awakens within us. If someone criticizes us, it makes us angry. The problem is not criticism, but the importance we give it. If we were confident in who we are, if our self-esteem was strong, we wouldn't need to react with anger. We simply ignore it. When our confidence is fragile, any blow shakes our foundations and we respond with anger as a defense mechanism. Insecurity creates a feeling of vulnerability. We feel that we must constantly protect our image, that we are being judged by others, that any negative comment is a threat. The mind interprets these situations as personal attacks and responds with aggression. But the truth is that no one has the power to diminish us if we don't give them permission. Epictetus said that what affects us is not what others say about us, but rather the opinion we have about those words. If we believe that we are weak, that we are not good enough, any criticism will reinforce this belief, and the immediate reaction will be anger. But if we have a solid image of ourselves, nothing external can disturb us. I remember a time when I had gained weight. Every comment about my appearance made me react with anger. I told myself it was because of other people's lack of respect. But the truth is that I wasn't angry with them. I was angry with myself. I didn't like what I saw in the mirror, and any external observation only confirmed this. It wasn't their opinion that hurt me, but my own. The anger didn't come from them, it came from the insecurity I felt. Over time, I understood that the problem wasn't what other people said, but my lack of control over myself. Instead of wasting energy reacting with anger, I decided to take action. I worked on my health, my discipline, my mentality. And when I did that, the same comments that used to bother me stopped affecting me. Not because people had changed, but because I had changed. Low self-esteem makes us interpret reality in a distorted way. We believe that others are constantly judging us, but in fact, the problem isn't in the outside world, but in the way we see it. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that if something external disturbs us, the problem isn't in the thing itself, but in our judgment of it. If someone says something that offends you, ask yourself, why does it affect me? It is because deep down I fear it as true, and because I have doubts about myself. Most of the time, the answer is yes. Anger is a defensive reaction, insecurity. When we strengthen our self-esteem, anger loses its power over us. We become less reactive, more serene, more focused on what really matters. We don't need to prove anything to anyone, because we already know who we are. The opinion of others ceases to be a threat because our worth does not depend on their approval. The Stoics teach us that true strength lies not in imposing our will on others, but in governing ourselves. Anger is a sign that something within us is still unresolved. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can use these moments as indications of what we still need to work on within ourselves. Every time you feel angry about a comment or situation, stop for a moment and ask yourself if it is really the comment that bothers you or if there is something deeper behind it. Use anger as a mirror to see the aspects of yourself that still need to be strengthened. When you improve your self-esteem, when you take responsibility for your life, anger becomes unnecessary. There is no longer any insecurity to be protected, no longer any fear to be hidden. All that remains is the calm of someone who knows themselves, who accepts themselves, and who does not need to react to what does not define them. Number 7. The importance of living with purpose. When you don't have a clear purpose, life seems empty, chaotic, and directionless. You wake up every day without a real reason to move forward, without anything to motivate you beyond the routine. And this feeling of emptiness generates frustration. The lack of purpose makes people irritable, reactive, and always on the defensive. Any inconvenience, any obstacle seems bigger than it really is, because there is nothing bigger to focus on. Without direction, the mind fills with noise and disorder, and in this state it is easy to fall into anger and resentment. The Stoics understood that the key to peace of mind is to have a purpose aligned with our values, something that makes us feel that our existence has meaning. When you live without a defined purpose, everything becomes a distraction. Traffic bothers you, other people's words irritate you, you feel that life is unfair. But when you have a purpose, these same things lose importance. Not because they cease to exist, but because your focus is on something bigger. Marcus Aurelius used to say that everyone should ask themselves why I am here. What really matters in my life? Because when you have clarity on these answers, small frustrations stop controlling you. You don't waste time reacting to every provocation, because your energy is focused on something meaningful. There was a time in my life when I had no direction. I felt stuck in a meaningless routine, doing things that didn't fulfill me, and the consequence of this was constant irritability. Anything bothered me. Any problem seemed huge because I had no real reason to get up every morning. I lived on autopilot, letting circumstances dictate my mood. But when I found my purpose, everything changed. I decided to focus on creating content, on sharing ideas that could help other people, on building something that made sense to me. And when I did that, I realized that the problems that once seemed unbearable were now just part of the journey. I no longer got irritated by small things because I had a bigger vision. Anger stopped being a habitual reaction because there was something more valuable to focus on. The Stoics teach us that purpose is not something you find, but something you define. You don't have to wait for life to hand you a purpose. You have to create it for yourself. Epictetus said that each person has the responsibility to decide what they want to become and what they want to offer the world. It's not about waiting for inspiration, but about taking action, about seeking what truly makes us feel alive. When you discover your purpose and work on it, your mind changes, frustration diminishes, because you don't worry so much about what you can't control. You don't need external validation, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You simply do what you know you should do, and that brings you satisfaction. When you live with purpose, life stops feeling like a succession of problems and starts feeling like an opportunity. You no longer react with anger to every obstacle because you understand that challenges are part of the journey. Every day has meaning. Every action contributes to something greater, and when that happens, peace becomes a natural state. Not because everything is perfect, but because you have decided where to focus your energy. There is no room for anger when you are busy building something that truly matters. If you feel that life is frustrating you, if you notice that you react with anger too easily, ask yourself if you really have a clear purpose. Ask yourself if you are dedicating your time to something that fulfills you, or if you are just passing your days without direction. The difference between a life full of frustration and a life full of meaning lies in this answer. Find what motivates you, what makes you wake up every morning wanting to move forward, and when you do, you will see how anger loses its power over you. Because when you have a purpose, everything else becomes background noise. Number 8. Reprogram your emotional response. The brain is not locked into one way of reacting. Thanks to neuroplasticity, we can train it to respond differently to situations that previously provoked anger or frustration. The idea that we are this way and cannot change is a lie we tell ourselves. The brain is malleable and, like a muscle, can be strengthened in certain areas depending on how we train it. If every time something angers us we respond with anger, we are reinforcing this neural connection and making anger an automatic reaction. But if we learn to respond calmly, over time, this will become our brain's new programming. When we face a situation that would normally make us explode, our instinct is to follow the pattern. If someone insults us, if something doesn't go as expected, if someone acts disrespectfully, the immediate reaction is the one we have reinforced over the years. But here is the key. If we consciously force ourselves to respond differently, we are creating a new neural pathway. At first, this may feel forced, uncomfortable, even false. But with repetition, the brain begins to accept this new response as the normal one, and eventually, calm becomes our automatic reaction. I remember one time when my dog destroyed an object that I valued. My usual reaction would have been to get angry, raise my voice, feel that internal explosion of frustration. But in that moment, I decided to do something different. Instead of giving in to anger, I forced myself to take a deep breath and pet my dog. At first, it felt like I was repressing my emotion, but in reality, what I was doing was teaching my brain that not everything has to be an angry response. I repeated this over and over. Every time my dog did something that would normally anger me. Over time, I noticed that my natural response changed. I no longer felt that tightness in my chest. I no longer had to hold back because my brain had learned that these situations were not a threat and that anger was not necessary as a response. Neuroplasticity shows us that we are not condemned to be prisoners of our emotions. We can redirect our impulses and make calm our new normal. Each time we decide not to react with anger, we strengthen the neural connection of patience and equanimity. And the more we do this, the more natural it becomes. Marcus Aurelius said that we cannot control what happens, but we can control our reaction to it. This is not just a philosophical principle, it is a scientific reality. The brain changes based on what we practice. If we practice serenity over time, it becomes our default response. This process does not happen immediately. At first, the mind will try to revert to old patterns because that is what it knows, what seems familiar. But if we are persistent, if each time we feel anger rising, we force ourselves to stop, breathe, and respond differently, we will see a real change. One day we will realize that situations that would have made us explode before now seem insignificant to us, not because we are repressing our anger, but because our brain has learned that there is no reason to feel it. Anger is a habit, just like calmness. If we feed our anger, it grows and becomes stronger. But if we ignore it and cultivate serenity, it weakens and disappears. It's not about pretending, but about reprogramming our minds to work in a way that benefits us rather than harming us. If we want to be calmer, more balanced, and wiser in our responses, we need to practice this. Day after day and with repetition, the moment will come when calmness will no longer be an effort. It will simply be who we are. Number 9. Love and gratitude overcome anger. Anger is an emotion that consumes, wears us out, and makes us lose control of our own minds. But there are two forces capable of dissipating it: love and gratitude. When we are trapped in anger, it is because our attention is focused on the negative, on what bothers us, on what we believe is wrong. We focus on lack, frustration, injustice. But if instead we direct our minds to what we love and what we are grateful for, anger loses its power. Not because the problems disappear, but because we stop giving them the energy they need to continue affecting us. Love connects us with what really matters. If we are angry with someone, we can ask ourselves, do I prefer to win this argument, or do I prefer to maintain this relationship? When we love someone, the need to prove that we are right becomes secondary. Anger is selfish. It seeks revenge. It seeks to prove a point. But love seeks to understand. It seeks to build. It seeks to unite. We often let ourselves get carried away by anger in trivial situations. We react without thinking and end up hurting the people we love the most. But if in those moments we remember how we feel for them, if we take a moment to connect with love instead of anger, our response changes. Gratitude is also a powerful antidote. When we are grateful, there is no room for anger. We cannot feel resentment and gratitude at the same time. If something bothers us, we can stop and do a simple exercise. Think of 3 things we are grateful for at that moment. Maybe it is our health, a special person in our life, the opportunity to learn from the situation. This simple act changes the direction of our thoughts, takes us out of a reactive state, and gives us back control. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations about the importance of remembering the fleetingness of life. If today were the last day with someone you love, would you really waste time feeling angry at that person? Gratitude reminds us that every moment is valuable and that anger is a waste of our time and energy. A while ago, I decided to do a little experiment with myself. Every time I felt angry or frustrated, instead of reacting as I normally would, I forced myself to think of something I was grateful for at that moment. At first it felt forced, as if I were ignoring reality, but over time I realized that my mind began to do this automatically. One day someone spoke to me with contempt, and instead of feeling angry, the first thought I had was, I am grateful that I am healthy and can continue moving forward. This thought allowed me to respond calmly, without fueling the conflict, not because the other person deserved it, but because I deserved to keep my peace. The Stoics understood that our emotions are not the result of what happens around us, but of what we choose to think about what happens if we focus on injustice, lack, or what irritates us. Anger grows, but instead, we focus on what we have, what we love, what we are grateful for. Anger dissolves. It is not a mental trick. It is a way of training our mind to see reality from a higher perspective. Epictetus said that the secret to happiness is not in having more, but in wanting less. When we cultivate gratitude, we realize that we already have enough, and that we do not need to react with anger because life continues to be good, despite the small setbacks. We cannot avoid moments of tension or control how others act, but we can decide which emotions we want to feed within ourselves. If we choose love and gratitude, anger will not find room to grow. When we love, we understand. When we are grateful, we let go. And in this daily practice, little by little, we become more serene, more centered people, and less likely to react with anger. Not because the world has changed, but because we have learned to see it in a different way. Number 10. Establish healthy boundaries. If you do not establish boundaries, you allow others to decide how they will treat you. It is not about being confrontational or rejecting others, but about defining the limits of your patience, your time, and your energy. When you do not set clear boundaries, you send the message that it is okay for people to disrespect you, interrupt you constantly, and not value your time. And when this happens, frustration grows, anger builds up, and you end up emotionally exhausted. But the responsibility for establishing these boundaries does not lie with others, it is yours. Only you can decide what you allow and what you don't. We often tolerate certain behaviors for fear of appearing selfish or unpleasant. We have difficulty saying no because we fear that the other person will be offended or reject us. But the real problem is not saying no, it's not saying it when it's necessary. If someone constantly interrupts you at work, if a friend only comes to you when they need something, if a family member criticizes you for no reason, is it really your responsibility to accept that? Seneca said that we cannot control how others act, but we can control how we position ourselves in front of them. If we allow them to treat us inappropriately, without reacting, we are giving permission for that to continue happening. When someone crosses a line and you don't put a stop to it, you are reinforcing that behavior. If someone criticizes you unfairly and you don't say anything, that person assumes that it is normal to treat you that way. But if you calmly and firmly establish that you do not accept that type of behavior, you are sending a clear message. You value yourself enough not to allow disrespect. You don't have to be aggressive or argumentative. You just have to be clear. I won't tolerate that kind of comment. My time is valuable. Please respect it. I don't feel comfortable with that. Simple statements like these can completely change the dynamics of a relationship. I remember a time when I would allow myself to be interrupted constantly, no matter what I was doing. If someone wanted my attention, I would drop everything and give it to them. At first, I thought that made me a good person, but over time, I realized that I was just allowing other people's needs to be more important than my own. I felt frustrated and exhausted, but it wasn't their fault. I never set boundaries. One day, I decided to change that. When someone interrupted me, I would simply say, "I'm busy right now, we'll talk later." At first, it was difficult, but little by little others understood that my time was important too. And the most surprising thing was that I didn't lose any important relationships. On the contrary, I started to feel more respected. The Stoics understood that setting boundaries is not an act of rejection, but of self-respect. Epictetus said that we must decide what is within our control and what is not. We cannot prevent someone from trying to cross our boundaries, but we can decide how we respond. If every time someone mistreats you, you allow it in silence, you are not being virtuous. You are abandoning your responsibility to protect your well-being. Saying no is an act of courage. Not because it is easy, but because it shows that you know each other and respect each other. Setting boundaries doesn't mean pushing people away, quite the opposite. It means creating healthier relationships where both people know what to expect and what is acceptable. People often don't even realize they are crossing a line until someone tells them. You can't expect others to guess what is bothering you. You need to communicate it. And if even after that there is no respect, then you need to ask yourself if that person really should continue to be a part of your life. Every time you choose not to set a boundary out of fear of conflict, you are choosing internal conflict over external conflict. You are choosing your own dissatisfaction just to avoid a difficult conversation. But avoiding the problem doesn't solve it. Learning to say no without guilt is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Not because it makes you stronger in front of others, but because it makes you stronger within yourself. Setting boundaries is not about controlling others. It is about protecting your peace of mind and living with dignity. Number 11. Not everything deserves your attention. Every day we face provocations, unnecessary comments, insignificant problems that try to drag us into chaos. But the reality is that most of these things are not really important. We wear ourselves out emotionally, reacting to trivial things, to things that will be irrelevant tomorrow. We live in a world where everyone has an opinion, where criticism is constant, where minor problems can seem big if we don't learn to filter what really matters. The key to maintaining peace of mind is to understand that not everything that happens around us deserves our energy. Every time something bothers you, stop for a moment and ask yourself if it really matters. A month or a year from now, I won't even remember it. Most of the time, the answer will be no. Even so, we let ourselves get carried away by the emotion of the moment. We feel the need to respond, to defend ourselves, to react. But when we look at things from the perspective of life as a whole, we realize that many of them are just distractions. Marcus Aurelius said that peace of mind comes when we learn to ignore what doesn't concern us. If someone insults you on the street, it really changes something in your life. If a stranger criticizes you on social media, does it have any real impact on who you are? Spending energy on every little provocation only distances us from what really matters. Imagine someone makes a rude comment about you. The immediate impulse is to respond. Defend yourself. Prove that you are right. But what do you gain from this? Is it really worth investing your energy in this discussion? A comment does not define your value. A criticism does not change who you are. If every time someone says something negative about you, you react, you are giving up your peace to whoever decides to provoke you. Epictetus taught us that we should not be slaves to other people's opinions. If something does not contribute to your growth, if it does not change the course of your life, then it does not deserve your attention. Most of the worries we carry are not even ours. We stress about what other people think, about problems that we cannot control, about expectations that do not even belong to us. We spend too much time worrying about what people will say, seeking approval from others, getting involved in situations that deep down do not affect our essence. But when we understand that our energy is limited, we start to be more selective about what we give importance to. This does not mean being indifferent, but rather learning to differentiate between what really deserves our effort and what is just noise. I remember a time when any criticism would affect me. If someone questioned what I did, I felt the need to explain myself, to justify myself, to prove that I was right. But over time I realized that this was a waste of energy. I learned to observe before reacting, to ask myself if it was really worth it. And most of the time, the best response was silence. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because it simply wasn't necessary. Not everything requires a response. Not everything deserves a conflict. Not everything deserves your attention. Every time you choose to ignore what is not relevant, you are protecting your peace of mind. You are training your mind to focus on what really matters, on what really changes. The Stoics didn't seek to control the world, but to control your response to it. If someone acts meanly, if someone tries to provoke you, remember that you have the option of not responding. Strength is not in winning all battles, but in choosing which battles are worth fighting. When you filter out what really matters, you realize that many of your worries simply disappear, The energy that was previously wasted on useless arguments can now be used to build, learn, improve. You can't stop people from criticizing you. You can't control what others say or do, but you can decide whether it's worth letting it affect your state of mind. In the end, true freedom isn't about doing whatever you want, but about not being dominated by what doesn't matter. Number 12. The importance of separating facts from beliefs. Often we suffer not because of what really happens, but because of what we believe it means. We live trapped in interpretations and stories we tell ourselves about who we are and about others. But most of these stories aren't facts. They're just beliefs we accept without question. And these beliefs can be the biggest obstacle to our peace of mind. The Stoics taught us that the key to peace of mind is learning to differentiate what is a fact from what is just our perception of it. When we don't make this distinction, we get caught up in unnecessary emotions and act out of anger, sadness, or fear without realizing that we are reacting to something that isn't real. If someone calls us useless, it's not the comment that hurts us, but our decision to believe it. The objective fact is that a person said a few words, but our mind transforms those words into an absolute truth. What if he is right? What if I really am like that? And suddenly a simple opinion becomes a burden that we carry for years? We don't stop to question whether it is true. We simply absorb it. Epictetus warned us about this. He said that it is not the events that affect us, but the interpretation we make of them. If someone criticizes us, we can see it as an opportunity to improve or as a personal attack. The difference between these two responses is not in the facts, but in our beliefs. The human mind is an expert in creating stories. We tell ourselves that we are not good enough, that we do not deserve certain things that we can never change. And the worst thing is that we believe these stories as if they were unquestionable facts. But where do these beliefs really come from? Many times they come from past experiences, from words we have heard, from mistakes we have made, and that we transform into permanent labels. If we fail at something, we say, "I'm a failure." If someone rejects us, we think, "I'm not worthy of love." But none of these thoughts are facts. They are just interpretations, beliefs that we reinforce over time, without realizing that we can change them. I remember a time when I believed that I wasn't smart enough to achieve certain things. Not because there was proof of it, but because at some point in my life someone made me feel that way and I decided to accept it as truth. Every time I faced a challenge, this belief came back. You can't do it. You're not capable. But one day I decided to question it. Where was the real proof that I was incapable? Hadn't I learned many things throughout my life? Hadn't I overcome difficulties before? I realized that this belief was not a fact, it was just a story I was telling myself. And as I understood this, I began to let go of it. It wasn't immediate, but with each thought I challenged, I regained a little more control. The Stoics practiced mental self-discipline. They trained themselves to examine their own thoughts and filter out what really deserved attention. They didn't accept any emotion or idea without first analyzing it. Marcus Aurelius advised us to ask ourselves when faced with any negative thought, "Is this true? It really is as terrible as I believe." More often than not, the answer was no. We are not as limited as we think. We are not the labels that have been placed on us. We don't have to be slaves to beliefs that prevent us from growing. But to free ourselves from them, we first need to recognize that they are not absolute facts. Every time you feel that a belief is limiting you, question it. Ask yourself if it is really true, or if you have just accepted it without proof. If you can replace it with a more realistic version, you will have taken a huge step toward emotional freedom. Separating facts from beliefs is the way to stop being a prisoner of your own mind. It is the way to regain control, to stop reacting automatically, and start living with clarity. When we learn to see reality without the distortions of our beliefs, we find the peace that has always been there, waiting to be discovered. Number 13. Developing a healthy self-image means that your self-image cannot depend on the opinions of others. If you live through the eyes of the world, you will be a prisoner of other people's approval. One day they praise you and you feel invincible. The next day they criticize you and you fall apart. This instability is the result of building your value on external bases, on something you cannot control. But when your perception of yourself is born from self-knowledge and acceptance, no one can steal your peace. The Stoics understood that true strength comes from looking within. from defining who you are without waiting for external validation. Only when you stop depending on what others think can you begin to live with true freedom. The problem arises when our self-image is formed by imposed beliefs. From an early age, we absorb opinions, labels, and judgments without ever questioning them. If someone tells us we are shy, we accept it. If they call us a failure, we believe it. But how much of this is actually true? How much of our identity has been built on ideas we have never analyzed? Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we should always ask ourselves if what we believe about ourselves is true, or just a story we tell ourselves. The key is self-knowledge. Observing yourself without filters, without illusions, without self-deception. Accepting your qualities and also your flaws. Not to conform, but to be honest with yourself. If someone criticizes you, your automatic reaction may be to defend yourself, feel hurt, or try to prove that it is the opposite. But if instead, you stop and reflect. If someone says you are selfish, instead of reacting with anger, you can ask yourself, is that true? If the answer is yes, then you have an opportunity to improve. If the answer is no, then the criticism is weightless and you can let it go without it affecting you. Epictetus taught that we should not worry about what people say about us, but rather about what is true. It is not criticism that hurts us, but our interpretation of it. If your self-image is strong, the words of others lose their power. For years, I worried too much about how others saw me. I tried so hard to fit in, to be accepted, to meet external expectations. But all of this took me away from who I really was. I did not make decisions based on what I wanted, but on what I thought I needed to do to be approved. This left me in a constant struggle, because it was never enough. There was always someone with a different opinion. There was always something I needed to change to please someone else. It was only when I realized that I could never control what others thought of me that everything changed. I stopped trying to fit in and started asking myself, who am I really? What do I want for myself? And in this process, the need for approval started to disappear. Self-acceptance is not conformity. It does not mean resigning yourself and stopping seeking growth. It is simply recognizing your own value without depending on external factors. When you accept who you are, with your strengths and weaknesses, successes and mistakes, you free yourself from the fear of judgment. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to demonstrate your value because you already have it. The most powerful thing is that when you stop seeking approval, you become more authentic. The people who really matter start to respect you for who you are and not for who you try to be. True emotional freedom comes when you stop living according to others and start living according to your own truth. This does not mean ignoring all external opinions, but learning to filter what really deserves your attention and what does not. If you know yourself, if you are clear about your values and your purpose, criticism ceases to be a threat. You live with confidence, with tranquility, without the need to impress anyone. Not because you are perfect, but because you no longer need the world to validate your existence. And in this state of clarity, you find the peace that has always been within you. Number 14. The fallacy of good and bad. No person is completely good or completely bad. We are all a mix of successes and failures, of moments of lucidity and moments of weakness. But the human mind tends to simplify, to label, to classify others as good or bad, according to what suits us or our experience with them. However, this way of thinking is a fallacy, a distortion of reality that prevents us from understanding the complexity of human beings. When we see someone only through a label, we fail to see who that person really is. A person's actions may be fair or unfair, generous or selfish, but reducing them to a single category prevents us from understanding them. The person who acts cruelly today may be the same person who shows compassion tomorrow. The man who has made mistakes can also do good. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we must see others as they really are, fallible human beings, conditioned by their history, their fears, and their experiences. No one is just one thing. No one is completely defined by their best or worst moments. And when we understand this, we free ourselves from judgment and the emotional burden it brings. When someone treats us badly, our instinct is to label that person as bad. We think they are unfair, cruel, and deserve to be punished. But have we ever stopped to ask ourselves what led them to act that way? Not to justify their behavior, but to understand that no one is born bad, that we are all the result of our experiences and choices. Epictetus taught us that we should not judge people only by their actions, but remember that each person acts according to their level of knowledge and understanding. If someone is disrespectful, it may be because they have never learned another way to relate. If someone cheats, it may be because they have lived in fear their entire life. This does not mean accepting evil, but understanding that it is not always something personal, that people often act out of their own confusion, not out of a conscious desire to harm. In society, people react according to their environment and circumstances. An individual can be kind to his family and ruthless in business. He can be generous to friends and cold to strangers. But these contradictions do not mean that he is a bad person. They just mean that he is human. All of us, at some point, have acted in ways that we are not proud of. We have all made mistakes, said hurtful words, made impulsive decisions. If we judge others harshly, we should apply the same criteria to ourselves. And if we want to be understood for our moments of weakness, why not do the same with others? When we stop classifying people as good or bad, our relationships improve. We no longer react with such frustration to the failures of others because we understand that each person is in their own learning process. We become more patient and more balanced. This does not mean tolerating abuse or accepting injustice, but learning to respond wisely instead of reacting with anger. Marcus Aurelius said that when someone acts badly, we should ask ourselves, did I really expect this person to be different? People act as they can according to what they have learned, what their mind allows them to see. If we expect perfection from others, it disappoints us. We will constantly free ourselves from this mentality. It helps us find inner peace. We no longer feel the need to punish, to react with resentment, to divide the world into allies and enemies. We become more objective, more serene, more capable of dealing with conflicts with clarity. True strength does not lie in judging others harshly, but in understanding that we are all on the same path, just at different stages of the journey. We are all here to learn and improve, and when we understand this, we stop getting worn out by the behavior of others and focus on the only thing we can truly control, our own evolution. Number 15. The process of recognizing, investigating, and nurturing anger is a powerful emotion, but it does not need to be controlled. It may seem like an uncontrollable fire that consumes you at the moment, but if you learn to manage it intelligently, it becomes a tool for growth and not a weapon of destruction. The RIM process is a technique that helps you deal with anger effectively, without suppressing it or acting on impulse. It is a method based on full awareness and self-reflection, something that the Stoics already applied in their daily lives, even without giving it a specific name. With the RIM, we can observe our anger without being dragged by it, understanding its origin and transforming its energy into something positive. The first step is to recognize that anger is present, not denying it, not repressing it, but realizing that it is there. Often, when we get angry, we react without thinking, as if we were on autopilot. We let ourselves be carried away by the emotion without even realizing what is really happening inside us. But if at the moment anger arises, you pause and say to yourself, I am feeling angry right now, you immediately create a separation between yourself and the emotion. Marcus Aurelius spoke about the importance of observing our emotions as if they were external phenomena, without completely identifying with them. If you can see anger as something temporary, as a reaction that arises but does not define who you are, you have already taken the first step towards controlling it. The second step is to investigate the origin of the anger. Instead of getting stuck on the superficial feeling of anger, ask yourself where it really comes from. Often, anger is just a symptom of something deeper. It could be fear, insecurity, unmet expectations, or past wounds that have not yet healed. Epictetus taught that it is not external events that upset us, but our interpretation of them. If someone interrupts you in a conversation and this irritates you, it may not just be the interruption that bothers you, but a deeper belief that you are not respected and valued. If you can get to the root of the problem, anger loses its power because you realize that what you feel has more to do with you than with the external situation. The third step is to nurture the part of you that needs healing here. Instead of punishing yourself for feeling angry, you practice self-compassion This doesn't mean justifying your behavior, but rather recognizing that there is a part of you that needs to be cared for. Maybe you have been repressing certain emotions. Maybe there is a limiting belief that makes you react in a certain way. Or maybe you simply need to give yourself more space to process what you are feeling. Marcus Aurelius said that we should treat ourselves with the same patience and understanding that we offer others. You can't eliminate anger completely, but you can learn to respond wisely rather than impulsively. As you practice this process, you will notice that anger loses its power over you. This doesn't mean that you will never get angry again, but that when you do, you will know exactly how to deal with it without destroying your peace or affecting your relationships. You will learn that anger is just a passing emotion, not an order that you must obey. Instead of acting through reaction, you will act through reflection, and in that space of awareness, you will find true emotional freedom. I sincerely hope that this message has been helpful. I want to sincerely congratulate you for getting this far and completing the video. This means that you want to improve as a person. If you liked the video, leave a comment. If you don't know what to comment, thank you. That way I will know that you watched until the end. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? Subscribe now and join us. Stoicism is full of teachings like this that are applicable to our daily lives. Therefore, I encourage you to continue learning about this philosophy. Here are 2 videos full of Stoic wisdom so that you can continue learning. Until next time.